Well, hey there, you're listening to The Brief, an Alberta Better podcast series. On this series, we explore Alberta's big challenges, celebrate stories of growth, innovation, and prosperity, and discover bold ideas to make life better for Albertans. On this episode, we're talking to the mayors of Alberta's largest cities. Her Worship, Jyoti Gondek, Mayor of the City of Calgary, and His Worship, Amarjeet Sohi, Mayor of the City of Edmonton, each talk about their respective journeys to the mayor's office, what their top priorities are for Edmontonians and Calgarians, what's keeping them up at night, and the opportunities they see for the future of Edmonton, Calgary, and Alberta at large. In the first part of this episode series, co-host Scott Crockett talks to Mayor Gondek, and in the second part, you'll hear special guest host Adam Legg speak to Mayor Sohi.
Well, welcome to the show, Your Worship. We're excited to have you here and to talk about some of the issues that make for a better life in Calgary and in Alberta. In a few moments, we're going to talk about your sort of main priorities, but it hasn't been all that long, by my count, about 130 days since you were elected as mayor of Calgary. And for the benefit of our audience, if you would, after one term as councillor, but for the benefit of our audience, which spans both Alberta and Canada more generally, would you start by just giving us kind of the 60-second version of your journey and your career path all the way to the mayor's office today?
I will try to do it in 60 seconds. I was not a kid who grew up dreaming that I was going to be the mayor one day. I was going to be a journalist, and that didn't happen. I instead got into marketing and running my own business. And then I fell in love with the concept of city building. In about 2007, I volunteered on a few municipal campaigns. I went back and got an education in urban sociology so I could understand the best practices of cities that were future focused and strong. And having done a lot of work in that regard for about 10 years, including volunteering at the city, in 2016 in December, I thought maybe instead of influencing from the outside, I should get a seat at the table. That's why I ran in 2017. And then I made the decision at the end of 2020 to run for mayor. And I hope that was 60-ish seconds.
That was wonderful. Yes. Thank you very much. And so with that backstory arriving at your, putting you into the mayor's chair, can you share with us, what are your top 3 priorities for your time as mayor?
Yeah, you know what? It's a really good question. And it was a question that was common on the campaign trail. And it's a question that was common for the 4 years that I served on the previous council. And if we look at this from a triple bottom line perspective, and we look at it from resilience, it's important to make sure that we're focused on economic, social, and environmental resilience. And it is absolutely critical that we remain true to the investment we've made in downtown revitalization. Our city has invested $250 million in making sure that our vacancies are addressed and that we are building a stronger downtown that is vibrant 24 hours a day instead of what we had traditionally done, which was a place for people to come and work and then they should leave. We did not get residential right. We did not get amenities right. And we have been given an opportunity to do so. So we need to stay on the path of that investment towards a revitalized downtown. I can tell you that our partners at the province and at the federal government are very interested in seeing the success stories. We have had some amazing affordable housing announcements. We now have a Center for Energy Transition in one of our renovated buildings. We're doing good work, and it is the future of business. The other thing we need to do is make sure that we are partnering with the federal government in particular to be able to attract the capital that's out there in terms of environmental resilience and making sure that we are moving towards energy transformation in a meaningful way. And there's no city better positioned to take on that challenge. We are a city of innovators and big thinkers. If you look at our clean tech sector, in the last few years, we have risen to a level where we are now top 5 in North America for clean tech talent. And those companies are interesting because we talk about diversifying the economy, right? By diversifying the economy and getting into clean tech, 51% of those founders are first-time founders. 28% of them were born outside of this country and 23% are women. So when you diversify business, you diversify the leadership that results from that business as well. And that's a success story. And on the side of social resilience, I think it's incredibly important to make sure that we strengthen our relationships, again, with our provincial and federal partners, as well as our social services sector, to ensure that every Calgarian has a dignified place to live and full access to the support services to stay housed. Those are probably the top 3.
Wonderful answer. And so if those are your top priorities, maybe I'll ask you a little bit about the challenges. I think one of the things about being mayor is that all the easy problems are, if they're an easy problem, they get solved somewhere else. If they arrive on your desk, they're probably a pretty tough problem. What are the biggest challenges facing Calgary right now?
I think the biggest challenge facing municipalities writ large is the fact that we have been sort of this sub-level of government for a very long time. We are called into being through the Municipal Government Act, so we don't exist without provincial legislation. We are nowhere to be seen within the Constitution. So although we provide very specific services according to the Municipal Government Act, and it's things like keeping the roads clean and making sure that your trash gets picked up and your water is running, some of the very wicked problems that we're seeing in society roll out right in front of us. Just over there from me is where we have the drop-in center. And they are doing amazing work there to make sure that people who are unhoused have access to shelter and services and can get into the system to get supportive housing. That's not really our technical purview. We are not supposed to be in the realm of social services and housing, but when we see things happening to our folks in positions of vulnerability, we feel the need to step up and do something. So we have committed extra budget dollars to making sure we're taking care of people. We have gone out with our DOPE teams and street outreach teams to understand how we better serve Calgarians. And we have a big advocacy role to play with the other orders of government. So I would say it's the complexity and wicked nature of these problems that belong to other orders of government, but land in our lap that are particularly tough.
That makes complete sense. And I often think that it really is municipal government that has the biggest impact on the day-to-day lives of citizens, because we interact with the services and the realities of municipal government basically every single day. I want to zoom out with you for a moment to an area that I know you've spoken about and I think you're passionate about, which is regional economic development. Calgary, Alberta, and those we compete with around the world. We're in a global competition for talent, for business, for capital. And increasingly, it feels like we're not just competing against other cities, we're competing sort of against these mega regions, the Silicon Valley mega region or the Cascadia corridor, the Sun Belt or the Front Range. And I'll give you a preview. Very shortly, we'll be releasing a paper with our friends at the Canada West Foundation, suggesting that maybe a similar approach should be taken in Alberta, with a bit of a cooperative corridor that would run from Edmonton to Red Deer to Calgary and Lethbridge, working together. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's going to be incredibly important for us to put the past behind us and get moving on building relationships. The Calgary region has been notorious for infighting and not cooperating. We had a Calgary Regional Partnership, which morphed into the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board. I was always disappointed that the focus of the Metropolitan Region Board was on land uses and service agreements instead of economic development. I think, we basically got schooled by the Edmonton region, who created a proper economic development strategy up there. So I think we need to get ourselves organized locally within the Calgary metropolitan region. And I think we've spent far too long competing with each other on tax rates and mill rates. And we've spent too long thinking about geopolitical demarcation and who's going to annex whose land. Let's just forget all of that and move on to creating structured business deals that allow both of us to share the costs and the benefits. And I'll give you a good example. ConocoPhillips is incredibly interested in setting up shop in two locations in in Canada, to do some work around petrochemicals and creating what they call virgin plastics, but they need to co-locate with a petrochemical facility. So I'm thinking to myself, we've got the land that would allow them to do this, but we need to share in this with Rocky View County, because a lot of the supply chain and logistics stuff that we see going on is shared between the two regions. So I've had conversations with the mayor of Rocky View County and said, can we start talking about business deals instead of who's annexing whose land? He's incredibly excited about that. All of the regional partners are understanding that what is good for one of us is ultimately good for all of us. So once we get ourselves organized, I think absolutely, to your point about how do we create a strong corridor throughout Alberta, that's the only way that we compete globally. I've had conversations with the mayors of Lethbridge and Medicine Hat and Red Deer. Mayor Sohi and I do connect quite often. We are very interested in seeing what we can do together, because if we stand strong as municipalities, we will be able to attract the talent and the capital we need here.
Well, that's so refreshing to hear. And I think that's something that we really need to compete globally. And the old style thinking that says, well, if this is going to happen just outside my city boundaries, then what's the benefit to my city? We need to do away with that kind of talk and really work together.
Absolutely. And we can't be competing with each other on mill rates to try to get business into one jurisdiction instead of another. And I can tell you that's another important thing for Calgary to wrap its head around. Right now, the disproportionality between non-residential taxes and residential taxes is something we're going to have to address. We started down this path in 2019. I think we need to put in a 10-year strategy where we are properly shifting the burden away from, businesses and non-residential properties, because they're getting hammered and we're not competitive in this nation. So it's going to have to be a gradual shift so homeowners aren't bearing a heavy burden, but it's about time that we got moving on it.
Well, that was exactly what I was going to ask you next. And I'm pleased to hear that, because it's my perception that this has been a problem in the way that our tax system is structured for some time, and that most of the solutions that we've put forward until now have been kind of short-term band-aids to get us over the next hump. What do you think the long term of a more sustainable fiscal picture for the city could look like?
So in 2019, when I posed the question of who's responsible for what proportional share of the operating budget, that's when things really came to light. And because we had enjoyed such a downtown boom for so many years with so many headquarters here, the property values downtown were through the roof and we benefited greatly. But when the alarm bells started going off in 2014, when we started to see oil prices go down and, people like Todd Hirsch said, be careful, because if there's an exodus, it will impact real estate. And I remember serving on Calgary Economic Development's Real Estate Advisory Committee, and we were incredibly concerned that the municipal budget would be impacted by shortfall of revenues that were typically enjoyed by those property taxes that we collected. So in 2019, we made a bit of a shift so that the responsibility changed from 55% non-residential and 45% residential to 48% for non-res and 52% for res. But we've got to get stronger than that. Probably we need to get to a 40-60 split, which would make us competitive with most other metropolitan markets. But again, you can't just do that shift overnight. Mm-hmm. If you do a graduated shift over 10 years, it's more bearable to the property owner. And we have to keep reminding people that your mill rate is only one part of the calculation. It's the assessed value of your property that is really significant. So it's educating everyone about what property taxes are. And frankly, it's about going back to the provincial government and saying, we need something a bit more certain and predictable in terms of funding streams. We can't rely on property taxes alone. So there's a lot of work to do, Scott.
Larger toolbox. Yes, I understand. Well, Mayor, on this podcast, we make a point of asking the most relevant questions. So I want to ask you a couple of the toughies that our members said that they wanted to put towards you. The first is one you've had before, but your first priority as mayor was to declare a climate emergency. Why did you make that decision? Why that issue? Why not something like other things we've talked about, affordable housing or city finances?
So when it comes to city finances and affordable housing, those were things that we had put into play as a previous council. And so I had the benefit of serving for 4 years on a council that was trying to change how we look at operating and capital budgets. Once again, how we look at taxation. So one of the primary reasons I ran was to carry that work through. One thing that we did not do well as a previous council is actually make a commitment to environmental resilience. The other significant factor here was that we were hearing from capital markets and we were hearing from financial institutions that to be taken seriously as a city and to get your sector, the energy sector, taken seriously, you have to show us a commitment. And it's table stakes to call an environmental emergency. It is simply something that is done. And I can tell you, having gone down to the World Petroleum Congress in Houston about a month after we passed that declaration, we were taken seriously. People said, "Oh, Calgary, you've caught up," is what they said. And I can tell you that our energy sector was incredibly happy with council being in step with the promises that they've already made. We had a climate leaders breakfast and an energy leaders breakfast where everyone came together to discuss pathways to net zero, which is an initiative from the oil sands producers. And our position was, if you have made this massive commitment, and you are demonstrating that innovation and technology can get us to more sustainable solutions, then why wouldn't we as a local government do the same thing you're doing and make the same commitment? So really, it has been working in tandem with the private sector that we were able to do with that declaration.
Well, you bring up a great point, which is that all the major oil sands producers effectively now have said that they're on the pathways to net zero, as well as quite a number of other energy producers beyond just the oil sands have made one version or another of a net zero or climate commitment themselves. So would it be fair to say that you see that the commitment, the declaration that the city's made is also congruent with ongoing support of the energy industry? I think that's an important thing that people want to understand.
Yeah, I think we live in a polarized world where if you talk about climate or the environment, people automatically assume that you're anti-business and that especially you must be anti-oil and gas. It's not the point at all. The point is understanding that when you have a resource that is finite, that you need to think of other ways that you're going to be producing energy into the future. And if we're not looking at the future, we're going to be stuck where we are. So when you know that the energy sector is trying to be more innovative and creative and use technology to be more sustainable, we should support them. And we should be demonstrating the good things that are happening. And we should be inviting capital to flow to our city to invest in those sorts of technologies and those types of solutions. Here's the other thing. We're hosting the World Petroleum Congress in fall of 2023. Yeah. And it's called Pathways to Net Zero. It'd be a little bit embarrassing if our city wasn't committed to that. So, if we're going to host things like this and be serious and get taken seriously, we have to make commitments ourselves that have already been made in the private sector. And if I may, Scott, just for a moment, if you look at the success that we are seeing within our innovation and tech sector and how many startups we have, and more importantly, how many of those startups have now been able to scale up to do important work, not only in energy production, but in agribusiness, in biochem. That's the kind of thing that we need to keep promoting in our city. That's the reputation that we need, one that's progressive in business.
Let me ask you about the other easy file, Event Center. It's made a lot of headlines so far over the course of the early part of this year. Maybe I'll just ask you first, generally, how important is a new event center generally as part of a growing dynamic Calgary, and what could the absence of it mean for our city?
So I was part of a council that approved moving forward with the event center. I was one of the votes in favor. I believe that there is tremendous benefit to be offered by having a good event center in our city. We've got an aging facility that will either need to be upgraded or we need a new facility. I think it's an opportune time to be looking at the Rivers District and understanding how it becomes a proper entertainment and cultural district. So I think what happened for a very long period of time is we looked at a single building as being the first domino or the catalyst to creating this type of a district. And I think that was a lot of pressure placed on that one project. I also think that the convergence of the economy and the pandemic put us in a position where supply chain issues created escalating costs. And when one partner is expected to take on all escalating costs, deals can become untenable. And I think that's what happened. I think the fate of this deal was one that was tied to rising costs through a pandemic. And so I'm incredibly hopeful that we will be able to get this right. I'm very interested in seeing what that whole district looks like and how the event center is a part of it. I'm hopeful that we are able to move forward with all of those things. Very much looking forward to speaking with Calgary Stampede as a partner, Calgary Municipal Land Corporation, and figuring out what all the component parts of that district would be.
What's your level of optimism that a new event center deal can be reached?
I have high optimism. I do. I think this council is committed to making sure that we're building a strong district, including an event center. And I believe that our partners at Calgary Sports and Entertainment Corporation would be interested in seeing what a newly structured deal might look like. And I think, again, CMLC and Calgary Stampede have a lot to offer in terms of how we build out. So there's lots of opportunity. There's many things at play here.
Let me ask you about another project, but in a different stage, sort of in the proposal stage, which is the Calgary to Banff passenger rail line. I'm interested in if you support that project in concept and what you think it might mean for our city.
I think in concept, it's a great project. I mean, there's a lot of people that are focused on the hospitality and tourism angle of it. I would also have to say that if you look at the price of housing in some of those areas, like if you look at people who are working in the hospitality sector in Banff, it is really difficult for them to find a place to live within their means. And so if we could have a project like this that actually provides affordable access to housing and mobility for the people that work out there, that's massive. So in addition to the hospitality and tourism angle, I think there is a very real social angle to this as well. So it's a project that would be amazing, I think, for our region. And I continue to watch what's happening with it. I'm really impressed with the fact that the private sector came to the table with such an interesting idea. Things don't always have to be led by governments. Sometimes the greatest ideas are led by community, and then we come on board as they take shape.
Right, to sort of support them through. And that's a very interesting dynamic that you brought up to do with it, thinking about affordable housing, because yes, when I have conversations like this with our friends in Banff or Canmore, usually the first thing that comes to mind in terms of priorities or challenges is the cost of affordable housing in those places. So if those individuals could have a chance to maybe commute on a passenger rail line and access some more affordable housing, I think that's a neat new dynamic in addition to the hospitality side. I have kind of a last fun and lightning round question for you. In Canada, one of the things that I think often gets missed is that while mayors have many tools in their toolbox, they are also only one vote on council. So if I could give you a magic wand and you could have all your council colleagues agree with you and vote unanimously, what's one issue, topic, or policy you'd want to move on in advance immediately?
Oh, it's such a good question. And you know what? We always get asked to pick our top priority. And I think the priorities are really, they're so disparate and they all have to happen at the same time. But I can tell you that, a good friend of mine who works in the housing sector once said to me, I want you to imagine waking up in the morning and not being able to brush your teeth privately, not having a washroom to use, and being outside when it's freezing cold or raining or so hot it's unbearable. And I want you to think about what your life would be like. Could you actually focus on doing anything? Could you get through your day? How devastating would that life be? And so I think if we are able to make sure that every Calgarian, frankly, anybody in the world, is housed with dignity, it would be an incredible starting point for success for everyone. So I would like to wave a magic wand and make sure everyone has access to dignified housing with proper supports in place.
Today we're speaking with Mayor Amarjeet Sohi of Edmonton. Mayor, Your Worship, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Adam, for having me, and look forward to our conversation.
We're excited to have an opportunity to talk to you today about some of the issues and priorities you're focusing on in Edmonton. And I wonder if we could start sort of at a broad level. You're no stranger to political office, a former city councillor, a member of parliament, a member of cabinet federally, and now Mayor of Edmonton. And so congratulations on your recent election victory there.
Thank you.
But maybe for the benefit of our listeners, which spans Alberta and Canada, maybe just give us a quick overview, 60-second version of your career and path, and what inspired you to want to take the mayor's office?
Absolutely, and thank you for that. I came to Canada in 1981 as a family class immigrant. My brother, who came here in 1976, he landed in British Columbia, but a year later he moved to Alberta because of the jobs and opportunities in the Alberta's growing economy at that time, and so we followed him here. And ever since, I have lived in Edmonton. This is a city that has given me so much, and this is a city that lifted me up. So I always felt that I have an obligation to make sure that the opportunity that I was able to have in the city, I should be able to give back to create the similar opportunities for other people who came after me. I got involved in a lot of community organizations earlier on. Then I progressed into volunteering for some of the politicians, both at provincial and local level, and that gained my interest in local governance around how decision making at City Hall impacts the daily lives of people. Average people who go on their day-to-day lives, but they don't worry about the decision being made at a provincial, municipal, or federal level, how they impact them. And so I was pretty curious about that and ran for council in 2004. which I did not win. Then I ran again in 2007. And from that day until now, never looked back. Served on city council for 8 years. And then, as you mentioned, federal minister for 4 years, and now back here in this role. And one of the reasons that I ran is actually a commitment to my city, commitment to making sure that Edmonton, we're building Edmonton for all of us. A city that gave me opportunities to go here, everyone should have those opportunities here.
Yeah. Well, Your Worship, thank you for a focus and career on service to the community. Both federally and locally. It's inspiring someone who has found a new home in Canada and Alberta, from where they were previously born, to wanting to be part of building a great country and a great city. So thank you for that. I applaud everyone who puts their hand up and says, I'm willing to serve in a public role and public office. So thank you for that leadership. You spoke just a second ago about wanting to make Edmonton the best city for all. As you assume the role of mayor, what are your top priorities in the office?
Yeah, so during the campaign, we talked quite at length about intersecting issues and opportunities that face Edmonton. Obviously, we want our city to continue to grow economically, create jobs and opportunities, ability for our businesses to expand, and for new businesses to start. And then there are challenges around houselessness, mental health, addictions that are causing a lot of disorder in the downtown and business districts. And then we have the challenge of climate change. What we talked about is that, like, how do we turn these challenges into opportunities? Like, if you're able to tackle houselessness, then we're able to actually grow your economy, because then people will be interested in investing in your downtown. And same with climate change. If you're able to use the know-how that we have in Alberta, and we do have the know-how, and we have so much potential to actually help Canada achieve its target of being net zero by 2050 because of that expertise. So those are the things that we talked about, and that's where we've been focused on, and that we can tackle all these societal issues at the same time. We can actually grow our economy, build a more sustainable future for people to continue to live here and enjoy themselves and build better lives.
Yeah, we do have tremendous opportunity here in Alberta, and in fact, we're working on a project called Define the Decade, which is really that this is Alberta's decade for so many things, whether it's energizing the world or feeding the world or inspiring the world. There's so much potential here, and we'll get to the one you pointed to a second ago, the hydrogen side. But as you look at 2022, the beginning of your term, how do you see this year shaping up for Edmonton in terms of the economy?
Obviously 2022, we haven't had a good start. We are still in the midst of this pandemic. We were hoping that it will be behind us, but it's still not. So it's really holding us back. But I am optimistic looking forward. Hopefully within a month or so, we will be able to resume back to our normal lives. People will be able to come back into offices, and our business will start opening up again. So I'm optimistic about that. I'm also optimistic about kind of the collaboration that I have started noticing now. I've been really focused on resetting our city's relationship with provincial government, and also tapping into my connections in Ottawa to rekindle those relationships and make sure that we're all working together to create policies, to create programs, and create, I would say, really make sure that doing business in our city should be easy, affordable, convenient, and what we can do as policymakers to open up opportunities for people to continue to invest and continue to grow and have those, prosperity that we all enjoyed. And I think our city, like, when I look back pre-COVID, Edmonton was doing well, and we were on on up, growing. And now we have setback, and we just need to figure out a way of recovering. But I'm optimistic that we'll be able to do that.
Yeah. Your worship, Edmonton and region, generally known as the industrial heartland, which includes Edmonton and many of the municipalities around there, are very strong historic roots in everything from upgrading and processing of oil and gas, petrochemicals, but now really becoming a real pilot location for hydrogen, as you mentioned a few minutes ago. Lots of potential there for so much of how Canada will then evolve in the hydrogen economy. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about Edmonton and region's role in the hydrogen hub concept, and what you hope to see with that as it grows and evolves.
Well, I am very optimistic about our capital region's potential in hydrogen, in petrochemical sector, in pharmaceutical sector, in artificial intelligence area, as well as Edmonton being a hub for health innovation, as well as great institutions, universities, and public education that we have. I think we have all the right ingredients. What we need at this time is policies that will help us untap that potential. And one of the things that I've been talking quite a bit with federal officials is how we, in order for I think Edmonton region is at a much advanced level when it comes to potential of hydrogen compared to other regions in Canada. So what I have been stressing to federal my colleagues in Ottawa is that create some policies that will not only help us untap that potential, but also align our goals with federal goals of economic growth, clean growth, and help reduce emissions. So, for example, CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, storage, and creating some policies around incentives around that, or tax breaks around that I've been advocating for. If we do that, not only we unlock the potential of hydrogen, obviously other tools will be required, but it also allows us to decarbonize our industries in every aspect, not just oil and gas, but every aspect. And hydrogen could be a vehicle for that, not only as a fuel that is cleaner, but also carbon capture as a tool that can make it carbon neutral. Right? I think these are the potential that I'm really excited about, and I'm working hard to have that engagement with the regional partners and our provincial and federal partners on that.
I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the Edmonton capital region, and part and parcel with creating the policies that enable us to be a leader. It sounds like it's being set up very strategically to actually create the demand. We can provide the supply and infrastructure all we want, but unless there's a demand for the hydrogen, so it's very interesting to see how it's being built out in terms of some of the ports and connections for transit and for the airport, and lots of different connections actually tie in the demand side of it, which is really an important piece of the hydrogen equation. So it's a great initiative. And you spoke a few seconds ago just about Edmonton has some really interesting strategic niche opportunities. Hydrogen is one that's emerging, but things like artificial intelligence, pharmaceutical, even video gaming to a large degree, right? Yeah. So
we're actually asking. I just sent a letter to Minister Schweitzer about creating policy tools and incentives for Edmonton to unlock its potential in video gaming and in screen industries, and I think there's so much we can do on that in that field.
Switching sort of topics to looking at some of the things you're doing in Edmonton. One of the topics that's been talked quite a bit recently in Calgary is the event center, and I'm not going to unpack that issue necessarily here, but you're much further along in Edmonton. You have the new arena, you have this whole district called the Ice District, and a really revitalized northern part of the downtown, with the event center and hotels and office and retail, etc. And I wonder if you could share with us how that revitalization of the ICE district and what it's done for Edmonton in terms of investment and vibrancy, and what it's done to change the shape of the downtown.
Oh, the debate that is happening in Calgary around the event center reminds me of the debate that we had here in Edmonton about a decade ago, right? About Rogers Place bringing hockey arena into the downtown core. I can tell you, even though that debate was very heated and divisive, now that I look back at our downtown, if you kind of think about, I know COVID has changed things, but when I look back pre-COVID, our downtown was actually was doing really well because of that investment that we made in the ICE district. I think that was the best decision that this council made, and I was so proud to provide the leadership on that project, because it took us a while to convince Edmontonians, to convince council colleagues, and really forge that partnership between private sector and unlocking the potential by having an area revitalization levy, that where we upfronted some of the cost of infrastructure and borrowed money against cities' books, but now that is being paid off. And we have seen, I think, close to $4 billion of investment in the downtown core. And couple that with the public investments in the LRT, in cultural institutions like Winspear, when you go a little bit further out of the downtown, iconic theater like Roxy Place. So I think all those investments are paying off today, and they'll pay off more when we come out of COVID. So it was, I would say, one of the best decisions that we made in order to revitalize some of the most challenging areas of the city that were sitting vacant for decades.
Yeah, it's a tremendous redevelopment of that area. I congratulate you and Edmonton City Council on how it's progressed, and it's just a real sense of new vibrancy and energy in that area. Your Worship, you spoke earlier about the intertwined nature of community and social issues and economic issues. I wonder if you could speak to things such as houselessness and safety in the downtown, and how those are intertwined with strategies around dealing with those, combined with the economic issues. I know Edmonton has done a tremendous job in increasing some funding to poverty reduction initiatives in the community. But how do you see business and government working together to tackle some of the social issues in the community?
If COVID has revealed one thing, is that all these structural challenges that we have faced are really on a lot of people's mind now, because they have been laid bare by the pandemic. So houselessness issues and addiction, opiate crisis particularly, and they are hurting our downtown. They're hurting our Chinatown. They're hurting our areas around White Avenue or 107th Avenue. All these nodes where businesses exist are seeing a high concentration of houselessness. And so in order to tackle those challenges, we need partnership with provincial government and federal government. And I'm very optimistic that we are on the right path. We announced 3 projects within last few months around converting old hotels into supportive housing. And we have put forward a request to the province to provide us support to build more supportive housing. So all these investments not only create construction jobs immediately, but they also help people get better, help people heal. Then those people become part of the society, part of the economy, and they start contributing. So not only immediate challenges that you overcome, but also long term. So I think that's where we need to focus on, because without tackling these societal issues, our downtowns and business districts will not be able to live up to the fullest potential that exists there, right? So that's why when I talk about, and also, uh, it makes sense to invest in social programs because they end up
Yeah.
saving you tons of money for taxpayers in the long run. It costs almost double to manage houseless than actually to provide someone a stable place to live and then provide wrapped around services for that person to get better. So it really ties into a financial sustainability as well as economic growth and then healing people.
Yeah. Some of those long-term costs of social issues can be much greater than dealing with issues that enable people to get a home, back on their feet, get jobs, employment, et cetera. So I completely
Yeah.
agree with that perspective. The Edmonton region is no stranger to very successful partnerships when it comes to the heartland and the capital
Yeah.
region. But now it seems that as economic competitiveness changes, those notions of the regions are getting so much bigger. So the Edmonton region isn't competing with just say Vancouver, Seattle. We're now competing with the Cascadia corridor, which is Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, massive mega regions. We have the Silicon Valley area, Arizona Sun Corridor, the Front Range around Denver. What do you see as the potential for an Edmonton, Red Deer, Calgary, even Lethbridge economic corridor as a mega region to try and compete with some of these other North American mega regions?
Yeah.
What do you see as a potential there?
We have been focused on making sure that Edmonton region, which is a big geographical area and number of municipalities, that when it comes to economic growth, when it comes to business growth opportunities, that we should be hunting as a pack, that we should be thinking as one.
Yeah.
And aligning our policies, our tax system, and our strategies and our marketing strategies together. And I think we are on the right path. Can we expand those partnerships to other regions? Absolutely, we should be looking for those opportunities. And because I believe that when international investors are looking at investing in the Edmonton region, they're not only just looking at Edmonton, or they're not just only looking at Fort Saskatchewan or Atchison or Leduc. They're looking at the whole region. What is the region offering to them? And what kind of quality services, programs, quality of life, and easiness of doing business, and all those things. I think that's why the more we can align our work together, the better results that we will achieve.
Yeah. The future is regional and bigger picture than it is just sort of the micro jurisdictions itself. Your worship, with our remaining time, we'll do just a couple what we call lightning quick questions for you.
Okay. One part now, right?
The first one being, the mayor in Canada is while the leader of the city is one vote on council, but if you had a magic wand for a unanimous vote on a topic of interest and near and dear to your heart, what would you move on immediately with council support?
Oh, I don't think I have to have a magic wand for that. I can just give you a real life example. Our first motion that we made at City Council, right after we were sworn in, was a unanimous motion to move forward an anti-racism strategy for our city, right? And I was so proud. I was so proud of our council, and it really warmed my heart that how embracing this new council is. So I can give you a very real life example on that.
There you are. You have a magic wand. There you are. That's
There
fantastic. You don't need one. You have one. And then finally, your worship, what would you want to leave the listeners knowing about Edmonton that you hope someone would know about Edmonton, or something that people don't know about Edmonton that you'd really like people to know as we close here?
What I would say about Edmonton is that we are the fifth largest city in Canada, right? But we also have a very strong sense of community, where Edmontonians think like one, and they think like value in helping each other and lifting each other up. And we offer the best quality of life, from affordability to the green space that we have, to the arts and cultural scene that we have, and the ease of moving around in our city because of interconnected network of transportation choices, right? So Edmonton is the place to be if you want to explore moving here, and we are here to embrace your ideas. We are here to give you all the necessary support that you need to make home in Edmonton.
Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Brief and Alberta Better podcast series. This podcast is a production of the Business Council of Alberta. You can learn more about us at businesscouncilab.com. And we'd love to connect with you on social media, so please give us a follow at BizCouncilAB on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you liked this episode and want to support our message of shared prosperity for all, please be sure to head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts to subscribe, rate the show, and give us a quick review. New episodes drop every other Tuesday. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.